In the late 1990s, telecommunications giants laid millions of miles of fiber optic cable, essentially betting on a digital future that arrived years too late.
Right.
And the resulting financial collapse completely reshaped the technology landscape. Today, the global market is aggressively questioning if Microsoft's multi-billion-dollar artificial intelligence infrastructure spending is basically history repeating itself.
It's a critical question right now.
It is. This is a targeted synthesis of today's market shifts. Our mission is to provide you with a concise, fact-driven briefing focused on momentum, industry impact, and regulatory actions. We are tracking three primary developments that define the current operational landscape.
First being Microsoft.
Right. First, Microsoft is facing a severe shareholder lawsuit regarding alleged cover-ups of its true AI infrastructure costs. Second, Meta has launched AI mode, fundamentally shifting the digital search ecosystem away from the open web and into a closed, proprietary social graph.
And third is the regulatory squeeze.
Yes. Third, we are examining a dual regulatory squeeze on global cryptocurrency markets, highlighted by the impending European Union MiCA deadline and an International Monetary Fund warning regarding Nigerian capital flows. We begin with the capital expenditure reality check currently confronting Microsoft.
The underlying tension across the technology sector right now centers on a pretty severe disparity. There is a massive gap between the transformative, long-term promises of artificial intelligence and the immediate staggering capital expenditures required to build the underlying infrastructure today.
Which brings us to the litigation.
Right. Microsoft is currently facing legal action that reflects this exact market anxiety. A lawsuit led by the city of St. Clair Shores Police and Fire Retirement System alleges the company defrauded shareholders and artificially inflated its stock price.
And the core of that claim is about Azure, right?
It is. The plaintiffs claim that Microsoft actively concealed a deceleration in its Azure cloud business, where growth dropped from 40% to 39%, while simultaneously masking the billions of dollars required to sustain its AI infrastructure build-out.
I mean, the data we are analyzing shows Microsoft's capital spending rose nearly 66% year over year.
Staggering numbers.
And following the January 28 earnings call, which disclosed these figures, Microsoft shares immediately dropped 10%.
Right, so we have to clarify the mechanics of how a company actually justifies a 66% spending increase to its shareholders.
Microsoft executives, including CEO Satya Nadella, attribute these financial results to capacity constraints.
Yes, they argue the company is deliberately shifting operational resources toward AI research and the deployment of its Copilot chatbot.
Nadella defended the expenditure by stating Microsoft is not simply renting graphical processing units, but rather building a full AI stack.
We need to unpack what a full stack entails in this context, because it represents a massive financial commitment.
Right.
It involves securing direct model access, developing complex orchestration tools.
Those are the software layers that manage how different AI models interact, correct?
Correct. They manage how models process tasks. And it also requires establishing security and governance frameworks. Now, Microsoft has officially stated the lawsuit's claims are without merit and intends to defend itself.
However, this litigation must be contextualized within an ongoing industry narrative regarding obfuscated infrastructure costs. We saw a similar structural issue in January with Oracle.
The Oracle comparison is vital for understanding this as a systemic market issue, rather than just an isolated incident with Microsoft.
Because in January, Oracle bondholders filed a lawsuit alleging the company made false statements during an $18 billion debt sale.
Exactly. The plaintiffs claim this debt sale was structured to mask a secondary, critical requirement for $38 billion in data center loans.
Wait, if Oracle masked data center loans inside a standard debt sale, how does that evade immediate regulatory or investor scrutiny prior to the offering?
It generally comes down to the classification of corporate debt and operational expenditures. Companies often issue debt for general corporate purposes, which provides immense flexibility in capital allocation.
Ah, I see.
If the internal models show that maintaining market share requires an immediate $38 billion injection for data centers, but disclosing that specific, highly concentrated risk would spook the bond markets, the capital allocation is often obscured.
Obscured within broader infrastructure or R&D line items.
Right. Shareholders are now demanding granular transparency because the scale of capital required to train and run these advanced models is simply unprecedented in modern software development.
The market is actively trying to determine whether these companies are making prudent, future-proofing investments or if they are trapped in an unsustainable arms race.
Which raises a critical analytical challenge regarding market precedent. We must question whether this represents a standard capacity constraint, as Microsoft claims, or a fundamental mispricing of AI development by corporate leadership.
Let's return to the telecommunications boom of the 1990s. Companies overbuilt fiber optic networks based on projected consumer demand rather than actual existing demand.
Right, the dark fiber overbuild.
The capital expenditure was massive, but the immediate monetization failed to materialize, leading to a severe market correction. You have to ask if the current surge in AI data center investments mirrors that 1990s fiber optic overbuild.
Where we are constructing infrastructure for an enterprise demand cycle that may still be years away from maturing.
Yes.
Well, the 1990s telecommunications analogy provides a critical framework, but the physical characteristics of the technology dictate an entirely different and arguably higher risk profile today.
How so?
In the 1990s, laid fiber optic cable was passive infrastructure. Once it was placed in the ground, this dark fiber could remain dormant at essentially zero operational cost until the consumer demand finally materialized a decade later.
Right.
Artificial intelligence infrastructure does not possess that latency advantage. The hardware, primarily GPUs, depreciates rapidly in computational capability as new generations of chips are released.
So we are looking at hardware obsolescence cycles of what, 18 to 24 months?
Exactly.
So unlike fiber optics, you cannot simply let a data center sit idle and wait for the market to catch up.
Precisely. Furthermore, maintaining the models requires continuous, massive energy consumption just to keep the servers cooled and operational.
So if Microsoft and its peers overbuild AI capacity ahead of actual enterprise demand, they cannot simply turn off the lights.
No. The ongoing operational expenditures and the aggressive hardware depreciation will severely impact quarterly earnings long before the projected AI revenue curve can theoretically catch up.
This fundamental difference in asset depreciation explains the immediate, aggressive market reaction we saw in January and the resulting shareholder litigation.
It does.
Moving from the hard infrastructure costs of AI models to how these models are actively deployed to capture consumer attention, we turn to Meta.
Right, a major shift there.
Meta has officially launched AI mode for users in the United States, which is powered by its proprietary Muse Spark AI model. This fundamentally alters the search mechanics on the Facebook platform.
Because instead of returning a traditional list of indexed web links when a user inputs a query, AI mode synthesizes conversational answers.
Crucially, it generates these answers using exclusively public data sourced from Meta's own ecosystem.
Specifically, Facebook groups, Reels, and marketplace listings.
Concurrently, Meta is expanding its software monetization. The company rolled out automated AI text replies for marketplace sellers and introduced Plus membership packages starting at $3.99 a month.
Establishing the groundwork for higher-priced AI subscription tiers later this year.
This development signifies a profound ecosystem shift. Competing platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google's AI overviews operate by scraping, analyzing, and synthesizing the open web.
But Meta is diverging entirely from this standard. They're treating their proprietary social graph, the vast, interconnected map of user relationships, posts, and interactions hosted on their servers, as a closed search asset.
By grounding the Muse Spark model exclusively in community content rather than indexing external websites, Meta captures and retains user attention entirely within its walled ecosystem.
The industry impact for digital marketers, publishers, and local businesses is immediate and disruptive.
Let's examine the mechanics of that disruption. How does this functional shift change digital visibility for a business trying to reach consumers?
Historically, digital visibility relied on search engine optimization structuring your external website so that an algorithm would rank your link highly.
Right.
With Meta's AI mode, that strategy is obsolete on their platform. Brand visibility now relies entirely on optimizing native social content within Meta's specific communities.
So if a user asks the AI for local restaurant recommendations or municipal guidelines, the system does not crawl the city's official website.
No. Instead, the AI prioritizes a local Facebook group comment or a highly engaged reel. It is a complete pivot from web-based indexing to social-based synthesis.
That operational insularity presents distinct, unresolved privacy mechanics. Meta has not clarified the technical mechanisms by which users can opt out of having their public text utilized in this AI data pool.
True.
Furthermore, there is no public disclosure regarding how the AI system handles historical content that users subsequently transition from public to private.
The data lineage is completely opaque.
But beyond the data privacy aspect, the functional architecture of the system requires heavy scrutiny. Are we essentially looking at a walled garden search engine where the encyclopedia is authored exclusively by unverified Facebook group commenters?
In essence, yes.
Because if we consider the liability risks of surfacing outdated or factually incorrect localized advice, whether regarding medical remedies, legal procedures, or local commerce, the reliance on crowdsourced search synthesis seems to present a massive structural vulnerability.
The liability vector you just highlighted is the primary vulnerability of the MuseSpark deployment model. Standard search engines utilize PageRank algorithms that heavily weight domain authority.
Domain authority being the metric that favors established institutions, verified government domains, and recognized news organizations.
Exactly, to verify facts before presenting them to the user. Meta's AI mode inherently bypasses traditional domain authority by treating user-generated social commentary as the foundational source material.
Right.
While all large language models are prone to digital hallucinations, the Meta system introduces the added variable of subjective, unverified human opinion presented as synthesized, authoritative fact.
So if the system aggregates incorrect technical guidance from a community discussion and presents it as a definitive answer, Meta assumes a level of editorial liability that traditional link-based search engines actively avoid.
Yes, a traditional search engine simply points you to a source. The AI engine speaks as the source,
Which is a calculated risk by Meta.
they are willing to accept the potential liability of inaccurate synthesis in order to boost time in-app metrics. If the user never leaves the Facebook application to view an external web page, Meta retains total control over the advertising inventory and the behavioral data collection.
We now pivot from the proprietary walled gardens of big tech AI to a decentralized ecosystem that is suddenly facing hard structural borders, the global cryptocurrency market.
Specifically in Europe.
Europe is approaching an imminent, highly consequential transition deadline. On July 1st, 2026, the European Union's Markets in Crypto Assets, or MiCA, regulation takes full effect.
The data indicates that an estimated 75% of the more than 3,000 pre-MiCA European crypto firms risk losing their operating licenses.
As of late May, only 204 providers had received official authorization. Enforcement rhetoric from regional regulators is escalating sharply.
It is. France's financial regulator, the AMF, is explicitly threatening 2 years in prison and €30,000 fines for unauthorized operations post-deadline.
Mandating that unapproved providers execute orderly wind-downs and assist clients in transferring assets to compliant institutions.
Concurrently, we are tracking a highly correlated regulatory reaction in emerging markets, specifically Nigeria.
To understand the global momentum shift, we must look at the volume.
Right. The International Monetary Fund reports that Nigeria processed $59 billion in crypto inflows between July 2023 and June 2024.
This massive volume is heavily driven by U.S. dollar-pegged stablecoins.
Every day, citizens and businesses are utilizing these stablecoins as a macroeconomic hedge against the severe depreciation of the local currency, the Naira.
The IMF is formally warning that this dynamic constitutes digital dollarization.
We should define that term for clarity.
Digital dollarization means the local currency effectively loses its utility within the domestic economy because citizens prefer to transact and protect their savings using digital tokens tied to the value of the U.S. dollar.
Yes. And that direct substitution fundamentally compromises the central bank of Nigeria's monetary sovereignty. It removes their ability to control domestic interest rates or manage inflation.
However, the IMF explicitly advised against implementing outright bans.
They noted that the Nigerian central bank's previous prohibition in 2021 was ineffective. It merely pushed transaction volume out of the visible banking sector and into less visible peer-to-peer networks.
Instead, the IMF recommends integrating stablecoins into domestic regulatory frameworks to retain some level of economic oversight.
Synthesizing these geographic events reveals a unified global momentum shift. We are looking at the definitive end of regulatory arbitrage,
Europe is utilizing MiCA to aggressively consolidate its market into a few highly compliant passported entities.
meaning a single license granted in one member state allows the firm to operate legally across all 27 EU nations.
Meanwhile, emerging markets like Nigeria are fighting active macroeconomic substitution. However, we must challenge the practical enforcement of these frameworks. How are these regulators actually capturing the market?
It's a structural problem.
Data indicates that 60% of European crypto users currently utilize non-MiCA authorized exchanges. Furthermore, 7.6 million out of 18.5 million recent exchange app downloads in Europe went to unlicensed platforms.
Right.
Considering the proven failure of Nigeria's previous bans, there is a legitimate question regarding efficacy. We must evaluate whether these sweeping regulatory frameworks are actually institutionalizing the market or if they are simply driving global capital into less visible, self-hosted channels.
The transaction data strongly suggests the latter scenario is occurring. When regulations impose high operational compliance costs, as MiCA does in Europe, or when they attempt to defend a rapidly depreciating currency, as in Nigeria, the market naturally seeks the path of least resistance.
In Europe, the strict July 1 deadline will inevitably force smaller brokers and regional wallet providers out of compliance.
And rather than migrating to the few approved, heavily monitored institutional platforms, a significant subset of users will transition to self-custodial wallets.
To clarify the mechanism there, a self-custodial wallet means the user holds their own private cryptographic keys, rather than trusting a corporate entity like Binance or Coinbase to hold the assets for them.
Correct. And they utilize decentralized finance protocols that run on autonomous code, completely lacking centralized corporate entities for regulators to target or subpoena.
This replicates the Nigerian experience perfectly.
It does. When traditional regulated off-ramps are blocked, the underlying market demand does not disappear. The methodology of the transaction simply evolves to evade surveillance.
Regulators are operating under the legacy assumption that restricting corporate access points controls the asset class itself.
But the reality of cryptographic networks is that capital routing is entirely agnostic to borders. The tighter the regulatory squeeze on centralized exchanges, the faster the technological development of decentralized peer-to-peer alternatives.
This significantly complicates the core objective of both the European Union and the IMF, which is maintaining visibility and control over global capital flows. Now, this systemic shedding of the old to survive the new isn't limited to European financial markets. We are seeing it at the engineering level as well. Returning to Meta, we have a final operational update regarding their broader ecosystem consolidation.
Right. Regarding WhatsApp.
WhatsApp is currently rolling out smooth chat bubble animations for its Android application, a specific user interface update that achieves visual parity with the iOS version.
Simultaneously, WhatsApp has announced it is dropping support for older Apple devices running anything older than iOS 15.5.
This hard deprecation of service goes into effect on November 30th, 2026.
While UI updates often seem trivial, this operational change serves as a strict indicator of Meta aggressively shedding legacy technical debt.
Technical debt refers to the compounding cost of maintaining older, outdated code.
Right. Supporting older operating systems like iOS 14 requires fragmented code bases and diverts critical engineering resources away from the deployment of current AI tools, such as the Muse Spark integrations we discussed earlier.
By establishing a hard deprecation date of November 30th, 2026, Meta is forcing hardware attrition upon its user base to unify its cross-platform operations.
This shedding of technical debt is a mandatory prerequisite for executing the broader, resource-intensive ecosystem updates required to support real-time artificial intelligence synthesis on consumer mobile devices.
To summarize this briefing, the global technology sector is undergoing a period of severe structural hardening. Microsoft faces intense financial and legal scrutiny over the immediate, unrecoverable capital expenditures required to build the physical foundations of the AI stack.
Concurrently, Meta is actively closing off its search ecosystem, walling off user data to fuel proprietary AI models, rather than indexing the open web.
Finally, the global cryptocurrency market is hitting an unavoidable regulatory bottleneck, with the European Union heavily institutionalizing access and emerging markets attempting to defend their monetary sovereignty against rapid digital dollarization.
These distinct data points converge on a singular macro trend. As Meta walls off its search data into a proprietary graph, as Microsoft attempts to consolidate the foundational AI hardware stack despite staggering costs, And as global regulators establish hard borders around digital financial markets, we are witnessing the definitive closure of the open digital frontier.
The internet and its associated financial networks are rapidly restructuring into highly regulated, proprietary enclaves. This transition fundamentally alters the barrier to entry across the sector.
It does.
For you to consider moving forward, what does this systemic consolidation mean for the survival of independent developers, open source researchers, and new market entrants attempting to compete in the latter half of this decade?
A critical question.
When both the massive computational resources required to build digital products and the strict regulatory compliance costs required to deploy them are restricted exclusively to the largest legacy institutions, the capacity for grassroots innovation may be permanently bottlenecked. Global Tech Daily is an AI-powered synthesis.